Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm Rooven Pakkiri. I'm a social KM consultant. And what I'm really going to talk to you about today is us, you, me, and the capital, the human value that we have and the value that we can bring to our company. And I like to set myself a little objective. But I think that if I've done my job, my objective at the end of this talk is that you should walk away thinking, wow, I either am, or it's not very difficult, it won't take much for me to add an incredible amount of value to my organization or just to my industry generally at the end of it. So I want to show you that you're a lot more valuable than perhaps you perceive at the moment. Okay. All right. But before we do that, I always like to do a little warm-up exercise, get everybody, get the creative juices flowing. So in this one, you can play along if you want to, or you can just think about it and sit back and relax. But I've already clocked that most people have a smartphone of some nature on their persons, or a smartphone that they use. I want you to think about the apps, the applications that you have on that smartphone. And if you had to categorize those applications and to put them into 3 categories, make it simple. Applications that I use for my private life, that are only to do with me. Applications that I use for work specifically, and applications that I call what I would call a hybrid. Okay, so a hybrid application would be a travel app, right? I use a travel app to go and to do private things, going to the theater and whatever, but I also use the travel app to get to work. Okay? So think about the applications that you have on your phone, and if you want, look at your phone, whatever, but categorize them. Now, what I did was I asked 2 of my colleagues who are also consultants. I didn't tell them about the presentation. I just emailed them and said, look, I want you to just look at your phones and tell me what you see. And so this provided my case study, if you like, my market research of the field. The thing is, these guys are both 40-somethings with kids either at senior school or at university. So they're of a certain age, right? They're what I would call digital immigrants rather than digital natives, if that makes sense. Okay? But here, I really cut and pasted exactly as they replied to me, because I wanted to just show the reality of it. So the guy at the top is a business intelligence consultant, actually just works across the street from here, and the guy at the bottom is a consultant for IBM. Now, what's interesting about both of these, and you can have a read of them yourself, is that when you analyze the applications on our phones for our generation, or for a certain age group, it's turning out, surprisingly, that the majority of apps are a combination of hybrid or work apps, and the minority of apps are to do with personal life or social life, if you like. Okay? Now, this has serious implications. If everybody in this room has the power in their hands to access software to assist them doing their jobs, right? Begin to pause for a moment and think about the implications, right? You're self-servicing now, right? You're moving towards the world of what we call the commoditization of IT, right? Gone are the days when you had to wait for the IT department to give you your prescription, standard issue laptop, which was locked in all kinds of ways and only allowed you to do, often green screened, to do things that were company related. Now you have the power to look at things to do with your company and your life and your job all the time, 24/7, okay? So let's follow this through. And this is IBM, by the way, at the bottom. So a company which is inherently conservative with a small c, even they have accepted that you cannot stop now the rise of personal empowerment. Okay, so what are the implications of this now? Oh, by the way, there's this one on the right is not either of these guys. That's a screenshot from somebody who's taken it to the next level. Because you can put your apps in folders as well. You don't have to just have them all arranged. You can see the top guy's got his in folders already, so he's heavily into his apps. This person has decided to arrange their apps in verbs, right? So to the way, perhaps can you not see that from there? Are you struggling to see that? Let me see if I can get Douglas's pointer. Okay, this guy's got jot, learn, listen, look up, navigate, organize, photography, play, read, set up, share, shop. So he's actually changed his whole life into actual verbs, things I do, ways I act, ways I behave, and categorize his apps there. So what are the implications? Let's think about this. So bring your own device. I don't know, well, let's just get some feedback out here. Most of the companies you work for, do they have an open policy on bringing your own devices, your own laptop? And see an Apple there would generally suggest it's got an open policy. Is anybody not where they prescribe you can't bring your own laptop? Okay, so we have roughly half and half. Okay, so that's a changing trend, because if we went back in time, that would be everybody in this room saying you can only use the company laptop. So bring your own device, which was a trend, is now becoming fairly well entrenched in organizations. And when you say you can't bring your own laptop, presumably you still have your own smartphone. Would that be right? You can't bring your own... So can you just tell us a little bit about that? You have to leave your phone at the door, or how does it work?
Yes, I work in a contact centre that's the Environment Agency, so it's a government agency.
I know the Environment Agency, yeah.
Yeah, we have to... for
check your...
reasons, we are customer data on screen, so our phones are locked away in our lockers at the start of the day.
At the start of the day?
Yeah.
And how do you find that as a person who uses
I've been working there for 11 years. So
oh, okay. What about maybe new generation workers? Do they find that difficult?
Yes. Yeah, they do.
Because they're so wedded to their phones, aren't they? Right. So and do you think that will change at the Environment Agency?
The Environment Agency as a whole, probably yes. In the contact centre services, because of the data security side of things.
Right.
Possibly not.
Okay. So it's just that particular sector that you work in that's. But is it open in the other parts of the organisation?
Most people are given their own device by the Environment Agency, so they might be able to use theirs alongside, but they will be given.
And do they have a policy at the Environment Agency about what you can say on social media about? Because the Environment Agency right now is one of the very hot topical things. Climate change is one of the number one, or up there, issues that's in the public conscience now. Everybody talks about it, everybody thinks about it, and everyone has very divergent views on, the planet and how we deal with it and what's going on. But obviously people who work at the agency have insight to things that are going on. I say this because I have a friend who did a consultancy for the agency for quite a while. Do they have a policy on what you can say about what's going on at the agency?
Yeah, you would be advised to not tell people in your, I'm not very good at social media, so in your profile.
Yeah, or your network?
Yeah, to not put that you work for the Environment Agency unless you are employed to blog or write on Facebook for the Environment Agency. So no personal opinions. If you put your personal opinions, you don't work for the Environment Agency. Yeah.
Can you put the proviso, these are my own, because that's how IBM's had to get around it?
Possibly.
Right. Okay, this is a very interesting point, because as we'll begin to see, the managing of human capital and the controlling of people and their ideas and thoughts is becoming almost impossible now to do. And so companies are having to work around ways to do that. And I'll cover some of those points as well. But let's go through this. So bringing your own devices yesterday. Bringing your own application is now the new black, if you like. So now you can find an application for anything that you want to do, even if it's work-related. Okay? And if you bring those 2 points together, you're bringing your own device and you're sourcing your own applications to solve business problems at work, yeah? Because you may be getting frustrated with let's say you want to collaborate with some employees on something and there isn't anything, or the company intranet is a little bit in the dark ages, let's say, or maybe you can't even control content on the internet, it's controlled by the intranet group. A lot of people are self-servicing now. They're finding things like Basecamp or Yammer or whatever, forming small groups to get together very quickly, solve a business problem, and then disperse again. Okay? And if that is happening, okay, then what the next thing that's being observed is there's a shift in the balance of power. The balance of power between employer and employee and the relationship between employer and employee is changing. And that's actually been borne out, if we look. So actually this slide is quite good, because what they're saying here is it's basically very difficult to control the number of applications that are coming into an organization. So if you can't stop them, how do you then embrace that? Because there is a paradox here. If we all start using different applications to collaborate, we've actually created the problem that we set out to solve, meaning that information then becomes siloed again in these different collaborative platforms. But here's a study from Deloitte which bears out what we've been observing in the marketplace. And this is from Deloitte again, which again, relatively conservative consultancy firm. And what they're saying is the balance of power in the employee-employee relationship is shifting, making today's employees more like customers or partners than subordinates. So, you know, I read this and I thought, do employers really treat their employees as customers? Is that true? You know, can you bear that out? I don't know if many people would instinctively agree with that. Well, what they mean is, what they say is that if you take your personal life right now and think about the way you do things in your personal life. You want to book a flight. You want to buy something for Christmas. You want to you want to check your bank account. You want to make a payment, right? Many of these things now you do online with very little bureaucracy, right? You found a ways and means of doing this instantly and doing it at the time that suits you. So you don't say, this is my work time, and then when I go home, then I'll do the banking, and then you do this in your lunch break, and some of you will even do it now while I'm talking. You'll flick onto your phone and you'll quickly do something, or say somebody did something on Facebook or whatever, right? You'll interact and you'll make things happen in your life as and when you want to, in your private life. You want to get an appointment with the doctor's surgery, you just go ahead and do that now. So employees are having this level of expectation and empowerment in their private lives, and then they come to work and they're suddenly finding everything is very rigid and siloed. And that discrepancy, as we'll see later, is actually causing a lot of people to rethink the nature of employment and what they want from their employers and what they expect from their employers. And so, hence, the relationship as customer. The one as partners is interesting. When you think about somebody as a partner, then you have a sense of equality, equal decision making. And as we'll come on to see in a minute, there's a real important thing that's going on today, and that is that the idea that siloed hierarchical decision making in companies, which is the traditional way that companies have made decisions, can last in this future world where things are happening so fast and there are too many variable factors that can never be ever. All the knowledge that you need to make a best decision is never contained in that small group of decision makers, right? There are too many external factors. And so the idea now of treating employees as partners is what we call collaborative decision making. Yes, there will be somebody in the organization, the executive, who will take the final bottom line for the decision, but there is absolutely nothing preventing them now from circulating the fact that they're intending to make these sort of decisions and canvassing across the organization people's input, experience, and so on. And as we'll see in a minute, that has serious implications. So, partners want a transparency and a share of the voice in an organization. People now want to work for a company where they can actually have some say on why they did this. You know, like, where's the beef, right? They want to have some input into, you know what, people don't like our burgers. I can see that on social media. We should change it, you know. Okay, so what's empowering employees? So this is a little personal journey, and you can do one of these for yourself on any given day, on any given week, in any given month. We've all done this. This is my own personal, from I think a month or so ago, self-directed learning. So this is, I'll start on a personal note and then we'll go into business context. Let me explain these pictures first of all. Okay, so I've got my... So this is an oven door, replacing the glass in an oven door. This is a track shoe, right? A spike got broken in a track shoe, and how do you get a broken spike which is embedded in the track shoe? This is a putting green, okay? And this is to do with something called a concept called black swans, okay? So let me talk you through these different pictures, and then we'll go through the dialogue around them. So these are YouTube events in my life that I had to solve a problem very quickly and didn't have requisite skill, but could use YouTube to self-direct my learning. I didn't have to wait to go on a training course or to call up an expert and so on. So the glass in the oven door at my house broke, and I phoned up the company, and the cost of getting a guy in just to even look at it was £200. It was a Neff glass door, and I thought, well, I like DIY, but this is a little bit out of my comfort zone. So I had a look at some YouTube videos, and I thought, I can do this. I'm pretty sure I can do this, because I found a video from a guy who said, you're probably not that good at this sort of stuff. You know, you just have a chemistry with a particular video, and the guy does it in such a way. But I was on a timeline with that one. My wife said, you've got 24 hours. We need the oven back. So 24 hours to replace the glass, otherwise we're calling the other guy and you're going to spend the money. Okay. One of my hobbies that I do is I'm an avid coach for track running and for football as well. But one of my athletes had broken the spike on their shoe and they couldn't run, and I had 48 hours to get that one done because they train every other day. So 24 hours, 48 hours. Okay? Putting green, well, my kids have all grown to a certain age now where, bizarrely, nobody plays in the back garden. So I had a choice about whether I should get into gardening now at this stage of my life, or, as I saw a YouTube video, build a putting green, right? Now, that's a 2-year project to build a putting green. Everybody in my neighborhood thinks I'm balmy, but it's a hobby, and it's over 2 years, and I'll visit those videos at various different points in time. And then the last one is, and I'm sure we've all had this, I was talking to another consultant, they were waxing lyrical, and they said, you know, it's a black swan. And I thought, and they were right in the middle of a long point, and I thought, I don't want to say I don't know what a black swan is, right? So I just made a note of it, and then, of course, I can go back to YouTube, and very quickly I can close that gap in my knowledge, right? So here I am advancing things and solving problems, self-servicing, right? I'm not requiring other people, and I'm able to do it very quickly. This is what we call the YouTube effect, okay? If we just look at the narratives, I choose, if we thought of this in a business context, I choose the right course, right? I choose the length and complexity of the training that's offered to me because it fits for my level. If we all go on the same training course, how do we know that we're all going to be at the same level, right? That video that I watched works for me, but for somebody else that would be too difficult, and for somebody else it would be too simple, right? So you get your Goldilocks moment, the right content for you, okay? And the style and the credibility of that guy doing it worked for me, all right? And likewise with the other videos. I also get it at the right time. I get it when I need that training. That's when the oven door went. That's when I needed it. Before and after, I'm not in the least bit interested in watching videos on home appliances. It's of no interest to me. And again, it covers blind spots. And what do I get at the end of it? I've saved a lot of money, and I feel incredibly empowered. All right? Now, let's take this YouTube effect, which is happening to everybody in their daily lives, and apply that to business and see what starts to happen. All right, so now we come to self-direct, the same concept again, but I'm sitting here, I'm in a company, corporate context, and somebody says to me, here are 3 different trends that are happening right now in the marketplace, but you could put anything up here. As I say, you can build your own models to prove this point. The first one is to do with cloud computing, okay? So all the rage, cloud computing. Some people hate it, some people love it. What are the risks and benefits? God, I don't know enough about cloud computing, but it's happening in my organization, and I need to, or in my industry. I can close that gap. I can do a basic thing, 3 minutes, whatever, on cloud computing. The other one is on big data, and the final one, the bottom, is on predictive analytics. Just concepts that are out there in the marketplace. But the point is, very quickly, I'm able to close these gaps, okay? And I'm able to eliminate the risks. If I sat down and in a corporate environment and I said, cloud computing, big data, and predictive analytics. Well, I can't go on 3 courses. I just don't have the time. So I have to guess, which one do I go on? Which one do I think will be valuable? You know how it is. You come back from a training course and goes, so how was that big data course? You go, oh, the cloud computing one was brilliant. Oh, you missed the, you know. Too many risks, right? I have very little time. Which one do I go on? And how do I even know that when I go on the course, right, the right people are going to be, I'm going to be right for that course, and it's going to be tuned into what I want. Okay? So now, with self-directed learning, I can close those gaps very quickly. Okay? I get the right group, I'm working the right content, the right place, right time. Very quickly, I start to think, well, why do I need company training at all? Why not shift the concept of training to an idea of learning, right? If there is somebody in the company that knows something that I want, and this is the whole KM piece, right? Isn't it better to create a space in which I can elaborate the issues that I'm weak on? And that draws in the knowledge from the organization and those people and answers it. And that's what those Shell community of practices, which are very famous actually, were able to do. They realized that, you know, the cost of drilling can be $100,000 a day, right? And if I've got a problem in territory A and we're stuck, but there is a person in territory B who's had that problem a month ago, we just don't, he doesn't know we've got the problem, and we don't know he has the answer. Creating those spaces in which those knowledge things can meet will save a lot of time. And using video is a really clever way to put learning out there, and then people take what they want when they need it, is a faster way to accelerate knowledge in the company. Oh, and yes, if I don't, as a quid pro quo, and you'll start to see this with millennials, if I don't want to go on the training course, I'm much more interested in a learning environment, okay? By the way, I'm very happy for you to compensate me as well on what I know and what I've learned. So we changed the compensation model as well, right? People are starting to now look at models where they say, let me pay you, right, for what you've actually learned rather than the fact that you've just attended X courses and ticked them off. Okay, and if I took that one step further, I've just focused on predictive learning here. If I take that one step further, if I said, okay, so I went on a basic course and I learned about predictive learning, and of those three things, or I decided that that was the area that I wanted to advance myself in, okay? I wanted to actually create more value for the organization. I can then go deeper and deeper into it. So here's the basic course, on predictive learning. Here's the TED Talks on predictive learning. I'm a developer, there's markup language. I've now been able to join a community on predictive learning, and by this point in time, I've created an immense amount of capital around myself, right, beyond what was the prescribed dosage, if you like, within the organization. I'm now in a position to leverage back to my employers and say, well, hold on a second, this is my level of knowledge, this is my level of learning, right, and how does that compare to what's in the marketplace? So you're able to very quickly increase your value. Okay, but here's the rub. You've got the power to do this, but so does everybody else. Okay? So if you link back to my talk and the idea that human capital is the last differentiator in organizations, right? If we're all learning at a speed and we've all got that knowledge, how do you differentiate yourself? Okay, so a little sideways. Does anybody remember when Friday nights in England used to look like this? Okay. Does anybody miss Blockbuster, by the way? I'm not promoting Blockbuster. I'm just curious, because I did have one person say to me once when I showed this slide, said, "Oh, I really miss those days," because they felt it was a very social environment, meeting people at the video store and getting your curry and your video and coming home. But the point is, that has disappeared from our life. As fast as it entered into our world, it's gone, right? So how are we replacing what that did? Anybody want to tell me how are they replacing their Blockbuster moment at the moment? What are they doing? Correct. Netflix is one of them. Sorry? Sky, yeah, okay. So now if you think about what I said earlier, you're self-servicing. You're taking the films on demand, right? You're disintermediating this group of middle people, if you like, right? Because Netflix have actually taken their model even further. They actually produce now. House of Cards is a Netflix production. Exactly. So the Blockbuster story is one we're going to linger on for a second here. Okay. So what happened with Blockbuster? It's actually very interesting. I don't know how many people know the Blockbuster Netflix story. It is the kind of thing of urban myth/legend now. But when Netflix first started, back in the days of dial-up modems, when the broadband there was no broadband. Basically, you'd do your online shopping and lose half of it because the thing would fall over, right? The Netflix model was struggling. So the Netflix CEO was a really smart, young, entrepreneurial American kind of guy, went to the Blockbuster board and said, look, I think I'm onto something here with Netflix, but we're struggling at the moment. I'd like to propose a joint venture. And the idea being is that you keep your stores, okay? People go to the Blockbuster store, but in the stores you promote, okay, the online service as an alternative for those that want to experiment with that. And then over time, right, you can see which way it goes and then you'll be ready. The Blockbuster people just laughed him out of the place. They said, no chance, absolutely not, you're a joke. We're Blockbuster, we're huge, and you'll never get near us, right? Of course, there in the top left you can see the share price of what happened to the two organizations. And as I say, it's very strange when you had something that was such a cultural center point of a Friday night that's completely gone now, which is the case of Blockbuster. Okay? Now, yeah, please do.
Put it in context, we saw Blockbuster as being what? Complacent? Didn't we use that word this morning? And the other thing was possibly a disruptive technology. And nobody wants to face a disruptive technology because they're complacent, they're happy with the way they are, until it's too late.
Absolutely right. And this is my point about human capital being the most valuable thing. Blockbuster made that decision by just having, if this was the Blockbuster company, they basically said the decision was made by that table over there, okay? If they had, and this is my point about why that Deloitte says that employees are now going to be treated as partners and collaborators, if they had opened up this discussion, and they could have done it in a private community, and they could have couched it in safe ways by making it, color neutral. There is a company or there is a technology called online on-demand video that we are considering, and they spread it out to here, right, to the entire company in a discussion group, right, with the Environment Agency parameters around it, if you like, that you can't say this, that, or the other. The odds are, and they would admit this today, that there would have been different kinds of people, and this is the point about human capital that we're going to get onto. There would have been the person that is the early adopter. There would have been somebody in this company, Blockbuster, who was trying Netflix in the evenings. And they would have come back in the forum or whatever, and that's what I do. I build these communities for companies to capture exactly these nuggets, right? Who would have said, so this lady here would have said, actually, it's not as bad as you think it is. Between these hours, I can catch the whole of the film, and these other times it falls over, but still, and then they would say, sorry, your name is? Alex. So then somebody in the forum would say, but Alex, do you enjoy the experience, and how do you get around it, and why do you prefer it to Blockbuster? And she would give them the reasons, right? My work rate is such that I get home at this time, and to go to the Blockbuster is not convenient, blah, blah, blah. They would start to paint a picture. Knowledge would start to accumulate around a decision. Instead of 4 guys in a room saying, actually, you know what? These guys will never make it. We're the dominant player. And if they make it anyway, we'll buy them. It's not a problem. The other thing is somebody in Blockbuster would have said, over there, I'm a technical person, right? I study bandwidth. I know that in the next 5 to 10 years, fiber optics will arrive in these territories first, right? And they would have shared their knowledge. They said, well, can you put something in the community? Can you share a file, graphics, whatever? They would have started to form a picture, right? All of that would have fed back to this table, who might not have still have rejected Netflix, but 2 things. They would have rejected Netflix with a better understanding, because after all, Netflix and Blockbuster are in the same business. It follows that people in this company would understand. In fact, with social networking, there's another table over there, and it turns out that that lady, her friend works at Netflix. So she's able to give you a whole bunch of other insights onto the organization and so on, maybe in marketing or whatever. The point is, they would have made a decision with the knowledge of what's in the marketplace, but also they might have made another decision which says, you know what? What's it going to cost us to create a 5th table here to start to experiment with the Netflix model, a Blockbuster version of it? Because the truth is, if they'd got there, and Netflix wasn't inventing any technology, Netflix was basically exploiting a model. Blockbuster, much stronger position to exploit that model. But they were so narrow-viewed and narrow-sighted about it that they didn't collaborate, and they paid the price. And we're going to see this in a minute. There's several companies, and this is going to happen all over. Collaboration, not just in Blockbuster, it gets even deeper than that. Collaboration with Blockbuster customers in communities of practice, right? Collaboration with Blockbuster suppliers, the Indian takeaway guy. He's got an angle on it, right? Saying, actually, if we did this, this, and this, that would work well, because I'm finding that between these hours, this week into analytics and so on, these many people go to Blockbuster, and then they go and get a curry and so on and so forth. So you start to realize the power of collaborative decision-making. Okay. Now, we talked about the YouTube effect. The YouTube effect was self-directed learning. You marry that now, so you go, after this course, you go back and you think, right, I want to take my company in this direction in knowledge management. I can use the KMI. There's external partner collaboration, the KMI website, which is rich, the KMI LinkedIn group, where there are huge discussions going on. I've been in there recently having a discussion with somebody about all these ideas. You're not restricted anymore to what's offered to you via the company channel. The next thing that happens, and this happened to me by chance, this gentleman, you said, Steve, you are a Netflix user. So I don't watch a lot of television. Just the nature of my world is I live in the digital space and read far too many, watch videos, to be honest, because I'm much happier watching company, corporate knowledge management type videos rather than reading long white papers. But 2 years ago, my wife was watching this series on the iPad. And every night I'm thinking, like, I want to go to bed and it's late. And she goes, oh, just a bit more. I thought, how long is this series going on for? Right? Because, 1 hour would sometimes be 2 hours and so on. I didn't realize that she was on Netflix and she was watching this series called Breaking Bad, right? Which I knew nothing about. And I said, well, what is this thing that you're watching that's so interesting? She said, well, it's about this school teacher who has a midlife crisis, right? and ends up restructuring. And I thought, oh God, that sounds so boring. I have no interest in that whatsoever. And I just kind of turn over and wait for the light to go off and so on, be really cross. But then Christmas came along and I had 3 free days. And I'm a sports enthusiast. And there was one of the sports guys, commentators on the radio said, player X performed badly at the match. He must have been watching a series of marathoning on Breaking Bad or something. So I thought, it's interesting. So I had 3 days off at Christmas. So I said, okay, let me see this Breaking Bad thing. So my wife, she said to me, oh, well, you kind of have to watch it on Netflix. No, it's not on, in video. So I watched it on. And I didn't realize that when you watch Netflix, as soon as you finish one episode, they reload the next one to gun you up, right? So it's like, crack cocaine. You just like, allegedly. And, yeah. So I went 3 days straight. I watched the entire 3 years of Breaking Bad. I will never do that again. My health suffered hugely for it. But it was possible. That's my point. And this, if the first picture here is the Autobahn in Germany. Now, I don't know how many of you know the Autobahn in Germany, or have been on the Autobahn in Germany, but it's quite an experience. You can basically drive at whatever speed you like. There are no speed restrictions whatsoever. Basically, fastest car to the left and slowest and so on and so forth. And if a guy's faster than you, you have to give way and they drive at that. Remarkably, they don't have very many accidents on the Autobahn. And more importantly, the German people have defend the Autobahn with their life. They believe that this is, for them, representative of personal freedom. Right? There are other roads where the restrictions apply, and the insurance companies don't like it. To hell with it, they're keeping the Autobahn. But the point now is that not only can you self-direct your learning, right, and decide which area you want to go into, you can consume at the rate that suits you. You don't have to wait for the next installment, right? You can take on board the entire thing as you like, as is the picture of Breaking Bad. And in fact, this phenomenon is now played out. And this is a study on the right. You probably can't see it from where you are, but it's a piece of research done in Canada where this concept of marathoning, right, where you invite friends over to cut through an entire series, Sopranos or whatever, watch the entire thing over a few days, is now become a cultural phenomenon, if you like, or things people like to do. But again, if we take these principles, the YouTube effect of self-directed learning, the Netflix effect of going at my own speed, right, and we make those available in an organization with the knowledge and practices and procedures within an organization, think about what effect that's going to do in terms of transforming a company. Imagine arriving at a company where they have basically their own YouTube channel. And they've gone, with the help of a camera crew like this, actually gone around the company and filmed, the engineering expert for this, the other expert for that, the drilling expert. Because those people are not going to sit down, those engineers and specialist people, and type into a community everything that they know. They're just not going to do that. But if you interviewed them and you asked the right questions and you curated it in such a way, you've then got all that knowledge captured in the company. And should those people, for whatever reason, move on, you've still got the knowledge there. But most importantly, the person arriving tomorrow at the company can go, they have a saying in the social space, I'm as smart as the smartest guy in the company, I'm just 5 minutes behind him, right? In this kind of self-directed Netflix effect, you can do that. Okay. Right, the next bit of coaching philosophy. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the 10,000 hours rule. Yes, somebody knows about it? Okay, so I'll just quickly go over it, because I use it a lot in my sports coaching. So basically, there's this guy called a Canadian best-selling author called Malcolm Gladwell. He's written a couple of interesting books, The Tipping Point and so on. Sorry? Yeah, Outliers, exactly. So the 10,000 hours rule was he basically extrapolated a little bit of poetic license from a bit of research done in Sweden, where he studied anybody that was excellent at anything they did, whether you were a great pianist or a ballet dancer or a guitarist or a surgeon, a sportsman, whatever. And he found that there were many other factors that got them from where they are, where they were to where they are, and that could be social, economic backgrounds. But one thing they had in common, all of these people who had excelled, is they had all completed 10,000 hours on their focused endeavor. Right? So they'd done it to that level of extent to become That's the sort of the scale from 0 to 10,000 between. So you've got 0 incompetence, 1,000 competence, 5,000 mastery, 10,000 virtuosity. So, you know, you're never going to play the violin brilliantly, no matter how talented you are, without putting the hours in. It just doesn't work that way. Okay? And if we look at 10,000 hours in company terms, it's quite interesting. I worked that out, and this is my own calculation, to be roughly 3¼ years in a company focusing on a specific task. Okay? So you're starting to create those experts in companies only at that point, the 3¼ years of doing one particular or focusing.
So this is a company where you don't waste 50% of your time.
Yes, exactly. It's a very good point. Yeah, I took a completely virtuous company where they leave you free, completely free to focus on what you're trying to do. So if you're at the, I keep going to environment agency because I haven't heard the other companies that you work for. But if you're in the environment agency and you were studying, let's say, let's look at what area that I'm interested in, wind technology, right? Energy generated from wind technology and all the different aspects of that. By 3¼ years, you would be something of an expert or a virtuoso in that area, okay? But somebody else has come up with a counter theory, right, which is called the 20 hours rule, right? They say, yes, agreed, you're 10,000 to become an expert, but in 20 hours, right, anybody who's a good teacher can show you how to be competent in something. So let's say you wanted to play the drums, right? In 20 hours, I could show you how to play the drums so you could at least get out a certain rhythm, a certain beat, okay? Yes, you're probably not going to be a rock star or whatever, but you'll be able to get a basic beat, or piano, or whatever the thing might be. 20 hours. Now, very interesting, if you extrapolate 20 hours back, it works out to, I work out again, to the 3-day training course, which is the standard corporate, you know, thing. Just go on the 3-day training course, because that will get you to level A, right? My argument is, right, with the rise of the new technology, right, you have the ability now, taking the kind of YouTube, Netflix effect, to take the guy with the 10,000 hours and condense that down, right, so that his knowledge, right, or her knowledge, is granulated so that the person within the 3 days can get that. Witness, I don't know anything about ovens or glass or how they're inserted, but I can take that knowledge, bring it down to 3-minute video and affect that change that I want to do. And the Bruce Lee one's just a bit of quizzical thing. You can read it however you want to. But he says, I don't fear the person who knows 10,000 different kicks. I fear the person who's practiced the same kick 10,000 times. Right? Okay? And that's my point about human capital and the value that we create. We now have the ability to become that expert in that chosen area. And we don't have to wait until it's handed out to us. We can actually shape it and then dictate it back to the organization. And in fact, where I'm going is organizations that encourage and foster this are the ones that will get the most out of it. I always like to refer back, like I did with Deloitte. This is a thing from a corporate. I won't tell you who they are. It could be SAP, could be Oracle, could be IBM, but it's very interesting that the way that they are presenting the same message. One, they're not branding it themselves, which is a step forward, I think. But two, they themselves are acknowledging, you know, the way people learn and consume information has radically changed, right? So if you continue as an organization to keep delivering it in the traditional way, you're going to struggle, okay? Now, I say, yeah, I agree with that. I think that we've proved that here already. But what are the implications, okay? This is what I want you to think about really now, and why companies are trying to treat their employees as customers and partners. If you think about it, each one of you has a unique matrix of pieces. In fact, the longer you've been working, the richer your matrix, right? It follows, right? The more people you know, the more case histories you can join on, not inside the company, but in totality, right? And the way in which we solve problems is no longer linear, right? The way, as we looked at the Blockbuster story, the way they could have solved that would have gone off in many different directions, and many people, we all have a piece of the puzzle, right? But finding the mechanism in which we can contribute those pieces to a collective whole is how we're going to make better decisions, right? The best answers to your company's problem aren't probably held entirely within your company. The truth, I mean, that's where consultants have traditionally earned their corn, but I think even that model is now under threat. I think that the answers are a permutation and a richness from across the piece, from your customers, from your partners, your suppliers, your industry experts, and the ability to bring that rich mosaic together is what is going to differentiate the winners from the losers. Okay, conscious of time. Right, okay, so just, I didn't say there was many text slides. This is one of them. I'll just quickly summarize. I think we've covered these. Oh yes, I wanted you to think about the last conference. Did any of you attend any kind of industry conference or workshop, or other than this one, obviously the one before that? And actually, in fact, think about this today. Today you're going to have, or over these 5 days, Douglas is going to explain a lot to you, and you're going to have the guidance book to go with it, and but you're also going to have a lot of interactions, right? And a lot of people, and the current thinking is that the greatest insights and knowledge and advancements is coming from the interactions and less so from the text, right? Because he could have sourced the text to you online, but the interactions is the valuable piece that can't be replicated easily, right? The problem is, all those interactions, I know this gentleman was asking quite a few questions earlier about project management and so on. If you think about it, over 5 days, a lot of that is going up into the ether. And it's almost impossible for the human mind to hold all those interactions, right, as we go through our lives, okay? So imagine if you'd had this kind of an event, okay, happening on a 24/7 basis, right? So you're still having the physical dimension, you're not replacing this by any means, but as this is happening, so it's being recorded, so the video is then available, so you can just flick back to the point. In fact, now videos are searchable, so I could just put in project management and it would click back to the bits in this discussion where those points were covered over 5 days. So you see my point about how very quickly you capture knowledge. Now, if you took that video and circulated within each of your own companies, right, look at the exponential effect. That knowledge has come from outside of the company, but is pertinent to the company, and in that way, it's been extrapolated. So that's one. And then my point being is, look at the stock of human capital. Right? You would never be able to replicate the richness of this room within your own company, because the richness of this room is built on its diversity. Its diversity is its richness, right? And so diversity becomes another valuable factor, and capturing diversity and then sharing it back. I mean, the nugget you said about the Arab company and the Sharia, you capture that here, you take it back to your company, and somebody in marketing goes, wow, that's so brilliant, Karen. Now I think about what we could do in my company. But it's difficult to hold on to all those pieces in a traditional way. Okay? And my point about Blockbuster we covered already. If he'd collaborated, the do-nothing decision, which is what they did, wouldn't have happened. Okay. So if the playing field is becoming leveled, everybody's got the apps, everybody's got the phones, what starts to differentiate company A from company B? Okay? And this is where I come back to, it's the people. It's the team, it's the talent, it's the way you work together and interact that is going to differentiate you. The more open, the more collaborative you become, the more you think about it in your personal life. In your personal life, you've got a problem in your neighborhood. Your babysitter let you down, or they run out of bread at the local. You quickly talk to the network of people in and around you, and you solve that problem. Somebody says, oh, do this, or go there, or try this. We've always done that as human beings. Right? We don't stop and think, oh, I compartmentalize you into this part of my life, and you don't fit into that part of life. You're just a neighbor. That's what being neighborly is all about. You say, hey, the garbage guys are late today, and you just tip off everybody else around you. That ability to do that now is becoming available to us in all dimensions of our lives. And therefore, the ability to exploit it is what's going to differentiate the winning organizations from the ones that are going to struggle. Okay. Coming to the end now. So human capital. I'll just look at 3 different views which kind of summarize where I'm going. The view on the left is the traditional one that we've always looked at, that this is how you form human capital. People, skills, roles, bring those 3 things together, and somehow magically you can leverage it. I think it's the leveraging bit that's always been very difficult for me to believe or buy into. Yes, those things happen in organizations, but leveraging it is difficult. Slightly more modern perspective, which we've kind of alluded to today, is human capital plus the social dimension, right? So my company's got a problem. We've looked within the company for the answer, but there isn't any answer there, or there isn't a good enough answer. But you know what? Wayne knows somebody through his network, through LinkedIn, whatever, who can bring out. Oh, he reached out to Douglas. Douglas then brought the answer in. Who's Douglas? Who cares? He brought the answer in. Then you later on say, well, Douglas is at KMI, blah, blah, blah. That ability to do that creates knowledge capital. The future, I think, is going to be even more interesting, where you have this, what I call the matrix of network, right? You stop thinking about any specific solution and problem, you share things. So you might take a problem that you have at work and share it on your LinkedIn profile and share it on your Facebook profile, and the solution starts to find you. The solution finds you. Human nature doesn't change. There's still self-interest. But I find you because I say, I can help you with that. You know, Karen, I see a problem and I can help you with that. Here's my skills. And you go, then you can judge me and evaluate me and decide whether to include me or invite me into the community or not. Okay, and this is a really interesting point that we find when we start developing social platforms. Who's more valuable in an organization? The subject matter expert, the guy, this really brilliant engineer who knows everything, or, and I'm just going to pick on somebody here, Liz, who knows how to connect everybody to everybody else. She's just that person that's got that ability and that talent that can see a problem, right, and think about somebody in the network that can solve it. Or she can present the problem in a way that an engineer can't present it, that then becomes accessible to people. We're starting to find that the linchpins, the connectors in companies, right, and when I say in companies, they work for a company, but they can connect the answer from even outside the company, become more valuable. After all, subject matter expertise can be sourced from many places, but a linchpin can only be sourced from inside the company. Nobody outside your company can understand who connects who and how that works. It's not possible. It's a factor of being in the company, right? So now, and this is what I meant, this is really the essence of my talk, your value is perhaps greater than you perceive at the moment because you're not leveraging it. You know a lot of things and you know how a lot of pieces fit together. If you can bring that to bear, it becomes obvious to everybody else in the company that you are that person that connects all these things, and those connections are incredibly valuable. We didn't do this traditionally because nobody bothered to reward us for it. We kind of got, there was always the do-gooders that did a bit, but you got tired in corporate world because you thought, every time I do that, nobody thanks me for it, I don't get any bonus, I don't get nothing. They just go, oh, great, thanks, and on they go, you know. So, but now, with social software, it's logged and it's automatically, it's visible to everybody that you're the linchpin. Okay, and just to take you a little bit outside of where we are now, so go a little bit into the future, but not that far, because I don't know how many of you have heard the concept gamification thrown around, and it drives you potty because it's like big data. What the hell is it, right? Again, you could do YouTube's. I'll give you my version of gamification. So there is low-level gamification, which you'll see on social sites, which give you like a tick or a reward or a thanks or a star or a little cup or whatever for making a comment. That's low-level gamification, and by the way, nobody really thinks, well, very few people think much of that. Okay, far better if I've come up with an idea on a company forum, if the CEO steps in and goes, like your idea, Rooven, you know, that's worth a lot more to me than just getting a tick or a star from the person who's in charge of giving ticks and stars. In fact, it's kind of, in some ways, derogatory because it makes you feel like you're back at school. But this is more interesting. Now, I am not somebody who enjoys, I bet John is one of those guys who does gaming, right? I'm not a FIFA, whatever, 2016 gamer and online gaming and all that kind of stuff. I don't get it. I think if you want to play football, go play football. And if you want to watch football, go watch football. Why do you need to do this? I don't get it. But my kids do it, and loads of kids do it, and loads of adults do it as well. So I thought I should take some time and try and understand a little bit more about the FIFA thing. So in the middle of a football match that I was watching over at a friend's house at half-time, the kids wanted to take over the screen. And I said, well, all you've got is the half-time. So the deal is you're never going to complete a game. You've got to sell to me what's the big deal about this FIFA thing. And I watched it, and I was nonetheless, I was not sold any further as a result of their pitch. But what it did show is gave me a wonderful, wonderful insight into the way that they're using this technology to actually, a way that this technology is going to come over to the business world in time. So I don't know, do any of you play FIFA or these games, or do you have children that play them, or any awareness of them? Great, I can give you a quick potted history. This is all you'll ever need to know, and then never bother again, right? So before you play a match, so I'm going to play a match against Hamid. Hamid? Yeah. Hamid. I'm going to play against Hamid. So before we can play on this gaming console, we have to actually assemble our teams. You don't just start playing, right? So he has to go, he goes first, and he can pick all his players, right? You can shop from a number of players and pick out its players, and then I go and I pick my players, and then we have a match against each other. But it's interesting, in the picking of the players, right, you can't just pick all the top-rated players. It won't allow you to do that. Like a company, it's looking for a balance, and that was the first bit that I really found interesting. They call it chemistry, because if you think about a football team, you've got strikers, midfielders, goalie, defenders. You have to have the blend right, okay? So he's got to pick his blend against my blend. So now I'm assembling labor, right, if you think about it, to solve a problem, to execute against something, and the system is giving me a rating of how well did I assemble my crew. Human capital becomes the valuable thing. Why did I choose Anne over Karen, right? I only had one spot in that area. Why did I choose Anna to complete my team? It turned out that Karen had a higher rating, but it turned out that if I put Anne in, the chemistry was better. The skill to assemble a team and the human capital become incredibly valuable. This is what they call on-demand culture. And so you can see with each player, the system gives you these different things. And of course, no player is great at everything. So somebody will be good at attacking, but no good at defending. Somebody good at tackling, but no good at... Somebody might be emotionally... They're brilliant, but in the next 5 minutes, they could get a red card, right? So be careful of them. So what is the chemistry that you want to get to have the right team, okay? And now, if we extrapolate that concept to the world of work, we can see, and it's already happening, that you will have this thing. In fact, millennials think that in the future, they're going to work in a world in which I think it's over 50% of the people that they work with, they'll only know virtually. And in fact, if I think about when I did the last talk at KMI, there was a person in the audience came up to me and said, we'd like you to do this work for our company. So I started to build this platform for them. But the company is based in Luxembourg. And I never really spoke to that guy ever again, other than he introduced me to the people in Luxembourg. And I've become friends with them, but I've never met them. Right? And I've done all this work for them in a Yammer community that I've built for them. And they've become my friends on LinkedIn. But in December, I'll be going there to kind of talk a bit more about it. But between now and then, I've never actually met them. I've only met them in this virtual world. So you can see a world now where you start to assemble a team, okay, based on an event that's happened in your company, right? So it's event-driven now. It's task-based rather than roles-based. So we are going to go and move into this new territory. We're going into China, right? So this is what we need to do. So I've come up with one. IBM and EA Sports and Nike decide they're going to cover Euro 16. So, you know, we've got the Euro 16 football tournament coming up. And these three decide they want to come together and take something to market. They don't know what they want to take to market. They want to build something. So, and they want a chemistry score of 87% when you assemble the team. That's your task. Okay? So now you will have to have the ability to manage a virtual team, and you will start looking at these different components, and they're giving you, and they'll want a squad rating, and so on. Okay? And then once you've decided what the combination of the team is, you'll go to market, look at the marketplace, right, to find those people to assemble the team. And when those people decide how can they join the team, you will give them some instructions of what they need to do. Because it's a virtual team, you'll also want to know carbon footprint now, because corporate responsibility is another big issue for organizations. So you, as an individual, will upload your skills into the system, right? And then they will assemble and decide whether you're fit to get the right chemistry for an organization. So here are some lists of companies along the bottom that could have gone the same way as Blockbuster. I mean, I don't know if you can remember back, what was it, the sort of 90s when Nokia was untouchable. I mean, nobody would, you know, the Matrix film came out, Nokia was in it. They were like God. You said, no one will ever remove Nokia from the mobile phone space. I mean, does anybody have a Nokia in this room? Oh, it's Liz. Poor Liz has got a Nokia. Are you looking to upgrade, Liz, or are you happy with your Nokia? Okay. And when you upgrade, will you go for an Apple phone or will you look at the marketplace? Okay, good for you. Because Apple is kind of in that, a lot of people think, and I know when I say it to Apple aficionados, they want to beat me up, but a lot of people think Apple is going down this same road of becoming a little bit like, you know, we are Apple, we're untouchable. And cloud computing and so on could challenge that. Or Liz shopping in the marketplace. Or a new company sourcing talent from around the place to come up with the next kind of mobile device and how it should work. But, you know, Kodak, well, we can all remember Kodak, Borders, I mean, I don't know. Does anybody buy books from bookstores anymore? I'm sure some people do. Waterstones? Or, right, Waterstones. Yeah, I see Waterstones still alive, you know. So my wife's an English teacher, so she's like trying to fight the good fight for the book, but I don't know. I don't hold up much hope for it because people don't buy books anymore, you know. So when Amazon came along and said they were going to sell books online, and many of us, and myself included, just laughed and thought, that's not going to happen, right? You know, well, where's Borders now? So these are the changes that are happening. The people are the things that will save these companies, nothing else, okay? As I say, the greatest differentiator will be the people, okay? And I'm just going to go, I went to the future, I'm going to come right back to the present. The truth is you're doing this already. You just don't know you're doing it. So again, I used my wife, bless her, who's a completely technology Luddite. You know, when the internet came along, she tried to do the shopping online. When it lost it, she just effing blinded all over the place. That I'll never use this internet, it's rubbish. Look at today, and she's the #1 power user of the internet in our family, bar none, and I have a family of 6. She does all the banking, the holiday booking, and so on. So I said to her, you know, the next thing is this collaborative area of the internet. She said, oh, if it's Facebook, I can't be bothered with that. It's rubbish. Who's got time for Facebook? Right, I've got a job to do. Right? I said, all right, so when we go on holiday, what's the first thing you do? She said, I go to TripAdvisor. I said, okay, so why do you go to TripAdvisor? She said, I go to TripAdvisor because I want to talk to people like me. Right? I want to get the opinion, not of the agent or the advertising. I want to get the opinion of somebody like me who's been on that holiday. Okay? So without realizing it, somebody like her, who's a little bit in the dark ages technology-wise or understanding the concepts, is actually a prime user and is leveraging value from the knowledge, the shared knowledge of trusted sources, people like you. I.e., she's not looking for the single girl who went on the holiday to Ibiza. She's looking for the woman with 3 kids and where do they go to eat and what do they have to do that was suitable for them in the evening, blah, 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 to make the right fit. Okay? The same thing you have to ask is not happening but needs to happen in companies. Right? Why do we keep thinking that Department A has all the answers to these problems and Department B has all the answers to those problems when we all work at the same company? Okay, and classic knowledge management, people, human capital are our most valuable asset. 80% of what any of us know about our jobs is in our heads, and only 20% is written down. And of course, every night that walks out the door in most companies. Capturing that knowledge and sharing that knowledge is now becoming mission critical for companies. And I guess that's what I do for a living, and that's what social KM is about. It's really the creation of what I call an institutional memory, a living, breathing, organic memory that exists independent of the individuals. Right, final slides. So, where have we gone? Companies were a group of people. Typically, we set them up in a hierarchical way. Email allowed us to pretend that that hierarchy didn't quite exist. You could move out of your silo if you knew a guy's email in a different department, or girl's email, you could contact them that way. Okay. Communities of practice allowed us to identify experts, but this is where we're heading. We're heading to this, what we call informal networks within organizations. The departments will always be there. There's too much at stake, and they're too critical to the functioning of companies, but you will not be bound by the departments. You'll have freedom of movement and freedom of ideas in spaces, and people will assemble within organizations to solve a problem and then disassemble again. And that's when I go on to how remuneration will change as well. And to prove that, my very last slide, and this is a busy slide, but I think it's worth lingering on. Now, you've heard that millennial stuff over and over again, and when you're my age, you're not really that interested in it, to be honest, other than what's in it for me. And I think, and this was my point about human capital, I think everyone in this room, based on what I think the area that you guys are interested in, there's a massive opportunity to make a living out of giving millennials what they want. Okay, so this is just something for you to think about. So we'll start with the points at the top, which are these facts about millennials. You can debate them if you like, but if you have children or you know people who are millennials, or if you are indeed a millennial, then you can verify this. But what they're saying is by 2025, there'll be 75% of the workforce. Only 28% of them feel their organization is making full use of their potential. Okay, so again, think of self-directed learning, Netflix effect, communities of practice, etc. And a very ambitious generation. 53% of them want to be CEO. That has implications, since there can only be one CEO. Right? Many of them will therefore, no surprising, plan to leave their job within 2 years. Okay, And 80% are actually, because of the mobile device and the power, are actually looking for jobs, bizarrely, in the toilet. So they're continuously on the move. What they want from companies, and I guess this is a quick test to ask yourself, if they joined your company today, do you give them these things? They want aspiration, recognition, and flexibility. Do you give them that? I like the second point a lot, because before I started the internet thing, I did 7 years in corporate world. And I feel their pain as well. 10 seconds feedback a month from the right person in the company is far more important to them than the annual appraisal, right? Because that allows them to check where they are and modify and move on very quickly. They say, give us 3 challenges in the first year to overcome, and that gets us more excited than telling us about job progression and everything else. Give us a problem to solve, right? And we'll use all the tools available, and we've seen it already. They'll go inside and outside the company to do that. And then you can judge us on those problems. Did we solve them to the way that you, Douglas, thought was valuable for the company? If not, then great, we'll go our separate ways. If yes, hey, guess what? You've just found the nugget, right? You can fire the other 3 and keep that one. That's the one you want, right? Okay? This is the most difficult that I work with, the companies I work with, very difficult, two-way feedback. It's so easy to say it, it's so difficult to do, because it's not natural for the incumbent workforce and incumbent management to give two-way feedback, because they don't realize that two-way feedback means I can challenge what you've just said or what you've put down or a decision that you've made. I can ask you to show me, I can ask you at Blockbuster to show me the sales figures for the last quarter. In fact, it turned out at Blockbuster that where they were making most of their money, which they didn't want to talk about, was on late returns, right? So they wanted to keep the late, it was a stupid model and it was foolish, but of course the numbers look so good, right? So I want to challenge you, and I want to work for a company that will share those numbers. If you won't share those numbers, and then if it gets out on social media, the accountant left the company and told everybody that that's what you do, because how did I find out? Somebody eventually spilt, right? Then a whole bunch of us are going to leave this company. Okay? Make business goals communal, not hierarchical. So share the goals of the company. You can, of course, say to us, look, there are certain goals we can't tell you. Mergers and acquisitions, we simply can't tell you guys about that. What we can do is we can have a discussion about areas that we might be interested in looking at merger, but we can't tell you, for legal reasons, we can't tell you if we're going to buy another company tomorrow or we're going to be bought. But other goals, of course we can share them with them. We should share them with you. And if you make them communal and you allow people to have their opinion on that, right? And I don't mean staff surveys, because that's the worst of all, because those are prescribed questions of what you think I want to know, right? But if you have a community of practice or an open forum where I can do that, I've got a better chance. They want to work independently. They want to work from home. They want to work. The last one's quite interesting. I don't know if you've encountered this or not, but I was listening to a university. Well, he's not a graduate yet. He's a second-year university student, and he was talking to a colleague who'd been at his university already, who was at JP Morgan, and they were talking on the phone. And he was going for job experience there. And one of the first things he was saying to the guy at JP Morgan is, what's the work-life balance like? I know I'm bright enough to go and work at JP Morgan. I don't question that. What I want to know is JP Morgan going to take everything I've got and leave me nothing left afterwards? So they're a generation that's, for us, I think for me anyway, a job was, you were grateful. You took the job, you got in the company, and you worked your way out from there. For this generation, the metrics are different, or appear to be different. Okay, and this is my last slide. I think we are moving towards a people-centric organization, not a data-centric organization, where individuality is going to come to the fore. I think the org chart will never go away in organizations, but I do think we're getting what we call the influence chart. So my point about, Anne being the linchpin in the company, people can see that, and so she's valuable. We don't want to lose her, right? And as I showed with the gamification, task-based, not roles-based. Not I do this and this is my job. No, this is the problem for today at the company and who can help with it. Right, I think I've gone way over my time, sir.
It's okay, it was wonderful though. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I've got to do one bit of promotion, sorry. I've been instructed and happy to do so. If you like this kind of stuff, then I do a proper course with KMI, and the next one is in February here in London. It's a 2-day course where we'll kind of get right into the nuts and bolts of communities of practice and how they work and so on and so forth.
We are running a little over, but it's worthwhile taking a few more minutes if you have any questions. Now, are you going to be able to join us?
I would love to, yes, and I'm probably going to stick around for the next talker as well, a speaker. Yes, and it's... hold on, I've got one from Karen first. And then
Sorry, yeah, I work in an organisation where 20% of the workforce is aged 55 and over. They don't have smartphones, many of them either outside work or inside work, and they don't live and socialise in the way that you kind of describe very often. So what's your advice for how to get those people to collaborate more and engage more when that is not their mindset? Many of them have been in the organisation 40 plus years, and this
is like alien to them. I know, it's like Mandarin or something.
Yeah,
I agree.
So do we force it on them? Do we wait till they move on? You know, how do we get them to engage with actually the people that are coming in who are the digital natives? Because we've got, you know, the younger generation coming in, and we need to link the two. So how do we do that in that kind of environment?
It's a good question. It's one I get quite often, and there's a couple of things. We'll talk maybe at lunch the industry that you're in, but let's assume that that problem is true for many different industries. Because depending on the industry, there's a greater imperative or a lesser imperative because of those are knowledgeable engineers and so on. But there's two things. First of all, it's really, really important, and this is why social KM is not like Facebook or LinkedIn, which are organic things. You do them or you don't do them. This needs a proper coordinated team, right? And which is kind of what I help develop and roll out for an organization, which says, right, first of all, let's identify who those 20% of senior workers are. Who are they as individuals and what do they know, right? And then further, what are their personality types? Because you'd be surprised, once I tell you, okay, that we value you at this company, you've got this expertise, but we want to capture this expertise before it goes, right? We want you to help us capture this expertise. You'd be amazed how much people start to open up. So that's the first thing, is you identify them, you acknowledge them, and then, this is the really important part, you find a methodology, because asking them to contribute to the company blog, it's just not going to happen, right? They'd be scared, for starters. They're going to make a mistake, they're going to do something stupid and so on. I don't communicate in that way. But you can talk to them, and then of course, as we've seen already, you can record them with their permission, and you can say to them, listen, I'm going to come up, and I often work with companies, we're going to come up with a script, okay? And I'm going to send you the script. Let's call this guy Jeff or whatever. And Jeff, you're going to look at the script and we're going to work together on the script. And when you're happy with the script, we're then going to get John and his company in and we're going to interview you and film it and get that on. When we've created the video, we're then going to put it up onto our collaborative platform and people are going to ask questions. If you're happy, you can come into the platform and answer the questions. If you're not happy, we will have somebody speak to you about what the questions are, and we'll ghost or co-author them for you. So there'll be, and this is the next bit, which we call mentoring. So you find somebody who's new, who's a digital native, and you partner them. They're doing this in law firms in America already, because they know the senior partner knows everything, right? You know, you want to know about divorce law, forget about what's in the book, right? He'll tell you what he learned over cases, right? The hard knocks and bruises of getting what you need for your client. But he has no time or interest and is financially there's nothing in it for him to put it into a blog or a forum. So they partner him with a junior law person and they partner up and they ghost it together. They ghost the blog, right? Divorce law around this issue or whatever, and so on. So we find the issue, we find the people, we find the issues and the knowledge that they have that's germane to the organization, right? Massive charm offensive, you have to, right? And you create a team that makes it easy for that guy and empowers him. He suddenly thinks, wow, my life just got a lot better. I hold court at lunchtime now, right? I sit and the camera guy comes, the script guy comes, and they take all this down, and then they show me a preview of it because you can preview everything before you publish. Is he happy? Blah, blah, and publish. Very quickly, that group will start to splinter into those that start feeling they can take a toe in the water. He said, I had the answer to that question the guy asked, but I had to wait for 2 days till you came back to me and said, oh, there's 4 questions, can you answer them, right? Why don't I just answer them as I feel fit? And then you'll start to say, yeah, absolutely. And by the way, you can answer them at any time. You don't have to answer them during working hours, right? You can answer them at the time that suits you. So slowly but surely, it's about the people first. And that's why I say we're moving to a people-centric organization. What's the alternative? You ignore them, they hold the knowledge, and they leave. Your company starts again with all of that having evaporated and has to build that gap. So it's and you be honest about it. It's a quid pro quo. I want the nuggets from you, Jeff, right? The other stuff, I'm not that interested in. But this we want, okay? And this is valuable, and we'll make time, and that's why you need executive buy-in, we'll make time for you to get that out of you and from you.
I might add one other comment to that. One of the benefits to that person, Jeff, is the sense of leaving a legacy. If Jeff has been in that position for 40 years, and some new, very young people are going to replace Jeff, to leave the legacy of what he is or she has accomplished over those 40. That's a key.
Very good point, Douglas. In fact, we have one client where they have now built a community for people who've left. So they can keep coming in and then they'll work on a mechanic for rewarding them as well. So you can earn a bit of money, but more importantly, they weren't even that bothered about the money. They wanted to see, because they love that company, right? How are people doing with the new projects and not getting things wrong, you know, and sharing their knowledge in those communities. But you have to manage those communities. You know, I don't know, for those of you that live in London, I consider this, the difference between social KM and Facebook is the difference between Richmond Park in London and Kew Gardens. Okay? Richmond Park is an open public place with very few rules. Of course, you can't go shoot somebody there, but you can have your Fintan the dog moment or whatever, right? You're fairly free to do what you like. It's unstructured. That's Facebook, right? To a certain extent, that's LinkedIn, right? These social KM things are like Kew Gardens. It's perfectly organized. It has the best palm house, it has the best orchids, the best gardeners. Everything is put as was, because time is money, right? And so when Jeff comes in, he knows what he's doing, it's in the right place, and he's got the assistance that he needs. You know, he can look at a forum and email Sarah, his mentoree partner, so it's reverse mentoring, the young person is mentoring the older person, and say, Sarah, I see this, and that shouldn't be there, that should be like this, and then Sarah changes it, sends him the link, and he sees it. So that's the point. It's a very organized and ordered thing, always focused on business execution, right, as opposed to just general interplay. Sorry, Hamid, you had a question? Sorry, did that finish that question? Okay, I'll be around for lunch as well, so.
Actually, it's very interesting because we have the exact opposite. Most of the employees of the company are young. The average age is 33, and we have senior managers and department leaders just turning 40. So we have a lot of initiatives, and we have a lot of, we're very much invested in social media. We have Yammer, we have SharePoint, we have, so we have so many collaborative spaces. Yeah. But what we're finding is that people are very happy to start the initiative, but they're less.
Sustained adoption is
they don't have enough steam to sustain the option.
The biggest number one problem for social platforms. They die away.
Yeah, they die away, and you have other alternatives quickly coming up. Okay, some people start their own initiatives, social media. For example, I gave an example earlier about we already have Yammer, but people are much more comfortable using WhatsApp to within a smaller group of people.
And you can't stop it. That's my point. You know, you're not going to be able to stop WhatsApp. I use it as well.
Yeah. So people don't actually see what's happening in that WhatsApp group.
Correct.
And it has to be, someone has to take it onto Yammer and translate it into that. So how do you actually maintain steam, and how do you take that to company-wide?
Yeah, so this is what I said earlier, that the very thing that you're trying to solve, you create the problem, but by siloed, everybody's going and sourcing their own tools now in this, you know, BYOA world, as they're doing with WhatsApp. I don't know how many of you know WhatsApp and how that works, but it's easy and it's fast. It's incredibly fast. So it's basically group text, if you think of it like that. Sorry? And encrypted. So yes, it's not easy to transfer it over and stuff as well. But and of course, there's the question of where does the data reside with WhatsApp? It's all cloud stuff, right? So nobody actually has the data. You're sending stuff anyway. So this is a really, really difficult challenge, and this is why you have to go back to Kew Gardens. You can't just have Kew Gardens overnight. You have to plot, plan, and prescribe it. And you do have to be draconian in certain areas. So what I call cutting the oxygen off. You say to the salespeople, if you want the presentation on the sales figures, it's only held in this community. If you want to circulate it in other communities, we can't stop you. But if you want to access that information and that discussion, it will be in this specific place. So KMI recently, I don't know if you noticed, they cut off, they had 2 LinkedIn groups, and Eric has now cut one of them off and said to everybody, the discussion is going to take place here. Exactly that point. They were getting too dispersed. People weren't sure, do I post it in this community or that community? So Eric said, let's keep it simple. everything goes into this one KMI knowledge community. So you have to have an overseer, a captain of the ship that's navigating their way through it and building that around business problems. But getting that balance right is really tricky, absolutely.
I recently counted the number of KM groups on LinkedIn. There were 43.
Which in itself is a problem, right? Think about it.
So
which ones do you choose? I know. And that's why, and that, by the way, is why, that's a different talk I do, but why I say, it's on the video on the site, so I better acknowledge it in case you say, he said that already, why I say that social KM, right, in a company context, will in the end be more powerful than the social networks on the internet space, precisely because they are wild, right? The nature is its complete freedom of entry and exit, so you can't control the structure of it. It's too amorphous. Eventually it ends up eating itself. It can't solve problems, right? When you get one that is controlled, so instead of having, how many did you say KM? Instead of having 43, imagine in a company context, you would dictate that is carried in this community, this issue's in this community, and that's why, I mean, I differ with a lot of consultants on this. They say, oh, when you put Yammer into a company, you should, to encourage adoption, you should let people form their own communities wherever they want, and I say, absolutely not. And, you know, some clients go for my approach and some don't. Mine is, you design it, you prescribe it, you make it Kew Gardens, and you signpost where everything is, and you don't create a community unless you have a community management team in place for that community. And you've budgeted for that, because somebody's got to tend the garden. Otherwise the weeds just grow, right? And people go back and they go, nothing's changed in that, it's just boring, you know, or it's not moved on, and then you get the dying away. If you have a community manager for that community, and you build organically only communities as you have the people in place, then it tends to take. Yeah, question? Did that make sense?
To me, that seems to almost go against what you were saying about the self-directed learning, and I think for me it's the proliferation of content. So you said about going to YouTube to find a video to how to fix your cooker, but I wonder how many videos you had to look at before you found the one that fitted, because part of the problem is there's no standardization and people just put any old, you know.
Correct, and a lot of rubbish, yeah. And people are trying to sell your product as well.
So isn't that why people do a 3-day training course? Because the content has been reviewed and assimilated and evaluated and condensed for them, rather than having to watch 400 videos and find that most of them are irrelevant. Do you see what I mean? So it's
I think I get what you mean. I mean, what I'm saying is, if I have a community, right, called How to Repair Your Oven, right, in my company, you could think of it as a company context or whatever, and I've got community managers there who manage that community. They've put in a series of videos which they think people will find useful, okay? People then consume those videos at whatever rate they're capable of consuming, so there's the self-directed bit, and they comment and say, I've eaten all your videos up, but I wanted something about this. Why haven't you got that in the community, Peter? And Peter replies and goes, right, I'll go and get that for the community, right, and add that in there. Or somebody else will say, this video is out of date. Then that is no longer best practice in the industry. That doesn't pertain. So a debate will ensue. So we're all curating the space, but there's a group that are responsible to drive it forward all the time. Whereas you're absolutely right. You go to YouTube, you have to wait. It's a bit potluck. But my point is, in the self-directed spaces, you've created enough. It's like we're going to go to lunch now, I'm going to guess. But I'm going to assume there's going to be some choice, right? There probably is, because there's going to be vegetarians here and meat, so on. There's a choice, but within a prescribed set, right? They've said, these are the things we're going to offer you for lunch, and that's what you've got to choose from. If you're not happy, you're probably going to feed that back to them as well. But somebody is catering, and that's the same thing in your company communities. You're catering for it, and you're responsible for that. So you're putting in the variety that people want, and you're adding the variety, but it's making it easy. And this is the beautiful thing with these platforms. If you had 5 videos in there, you very quickly see which video is getting the most hits. And by the way, that old guy, Jeff, you go back to Jeff and say, Jeff, your video is the one that people most download and most liked in the company. You feed that loop back again to the person who's been partly responsible for that.